Today on Locked On Canadiens, a dominant win for the Montreal Canadiens against the Calgary Flames. We have lots and lots of flowers to hand out today.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network, and that's all thanks to you guys. I love saying that, and we're so grateful to all of you. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm not joined today by my wonderful co-host Ian Boisvert. He is away today, but we're hoping that he will be back for tomorrow's episode, which incidentally is the mailbag. We'll get into that a little bit later. Today, I want to talk about a game summary of that, or a game recap, I should say, game analysis of that win against the Calgary Flames for Montreal. A little bit later in the episode, I do want to talk about Alexandre Texier as well as Phillip Danault having career resurgences here in Montreal. A little bit later, I also want to talk about Kirby Dach was seen in a boot and a little bit of injury update, as well as we look ahead to the game against Florida, which is tonight by the time you're hearing this. So I want to start, first of all, by saying I know this episode is going to be late. Apologies for that. The last couple of episodes have been late. We are having a little bit of issue with the system that we use to record our podcast. Like, it sometimes is taking a long time to process, and it's not my slow internet. I checked, and unfortunately, because the game was a 7:30 start, I started recording it a little bit late, and so we just kind of have to suffer through the processing. But I really hope to get this up as soon as possible. But in case it's up much later than usual, I do apologize. I know the last couple have been as well. And that's partly been my bad. I've just been home too late to actually record them early enough, like maybe at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. So they could be up by midnight. All right, let's get into that game. There was concern. We expressed it on this podcast. I had a special guest on the Tuesday episode, and we talked about it like we don't want the Montreal Canadiens to play down to their opponents. I feel like they kind of did that against St. Louis. They didn't take St. Louis seriously enough. We talked a lot this season and last season a little bit about killer instinct. Like, when there is a team that is a bottom feeder, it should be there for the taking. We talked about that as well. And we do know that the Montreal Canadiens this year are much better on the road than they are at home. They have struggled quite a bit at home, and there are many reasons for that, and we can get into that a little bit. But I just want to bask in the joy of that win. It was absolutely dominant. Montreal did not play down to their opponent. They skated circles around them. They played with their food before they ate it. Dustin Wolf was actually quite good, despite the allowing 4 goals. If he wasn't there, maybe he would have Calgary would have allowed 9 goals. I think the Habs were just on fire. I think they came back from that road trip feeling good about themselves, and I think that's completely justified, given how well they did over the course of it. I know they're still missing key players. We'll get into that later in the show, but they've been able to, we wanted them to kind of tread water and be able to just survive without these players coming back, but they've done a little bit more than that. There's still a lot of question marks, obviously, but what I really loved was that they came back, and this is the assignment is you can't allow 2 points to Calgary. You can't do it. You can't squander your own 2 points. Calgary doesn't matter as much, but you can't lose those 2 points, right? And so from the get-go, the Canadiens were buzzing. They were doing so well. I believe the only thing that the Calgary was better than them on was actually face-offs, which is not surprising. That is an area of weakness for the Montreal Canadiens. But from the first period, they were just really, we talked about being hard, making it hard for the goalie, making it hard for Dustin Wolf. And that's what they did. They made it really hard. And he did come up big, and the Canadiens weren't able to score until the second period. But the team on the ice came out with so much poise, so much fire, so much determination, and just would not allow the opponent back into the game, which is something that, we've seen them do. And usually they do it against really good teams like a Carolina or a Dallas. We saw that they still won those games, but I think that they suffocated Calgary. They just did not allow them a single opportunity, which was kind of crazy because one of the officials was Garrett Rank. And if you don't remember who Garrett Rank is, he's the one who handed the game to the Edmonton Oilers very early in the season for the Habs. And it's not, he doesn't just do this to the Habs. He's just, his decision making is absolutely wild. Like, it's incredible. And obviously this time around, he handed a bunch of penalties to Montreal in a row before they were able to get a power play. But the Canadiens also, like, it was as if that didn't even matter, right? Like, it was, they shrugged it off and it was totally fine. And they were able to put everything together. I want to single out a couple players because we're going to talk about a lot of players who were good tonight. I want to talk about Arber Xhekaj. What a game Arber Xhekaj had. I felt like everything he was doing was the right thing to do, which is a criticism that we've had of him, right? Like, sometimes we say he doesn't pick his spots and sometimes we say he doesn't get into the right position. But I felt that this game, he was so good. He had a couple of scoring chances, which is really, really fun for me. We know where they're not going to go in, but just kind of imagine they do one day, right? So I really cannot say enough about how intelligent his game was tonight. And when he used his body, it was effective, but he used his skill a lot more in this game, I found, and I really loved it. And we get a lot of flack for Arber Xhekaj because we do criticize him, but we criticize him because we want the best for him, right? And in this game, no critiques, just phenomenal, just excellent. I also thought Jayden Struble had a good game. We've been really hard on him this season. I was really hard on him in my letter grades yesterday. He also had a pretty decent game. Obviously, Mike Matheson silently having an incredible game as well. He's not going to be one of the main people we talk about today because there's a whole bunch of other players that were huge factors in the game. But Mike Matheson just coming up big on those penalty kills, just putting the puck in the right place. I cannot say enough about Mike Matheson's game today. I don't, there's not very many people. I don't remember anyone whose game I was not happy with, but I do want to single people out, right? Jacob Fowler, really good. Not as tested by Calgary as I would have thought, given who they have on their roster, right? Your Nazem Kadris, your Huberdeaus. But he was tested. He allowed 2 goals, but at least one of them was called off for being offside, thankfully. I do also I think that this was really, really good for him because even though he's been playing really well, he's had a string of L's, right, in his last few starts. So for me, him playing well, but also being rewarded with a win is just like a nice cherry on the top. And if you were to ask me who was the driver of that win, there's so many people. I know we're going to talk about Alexandre Texier in a little bit, but there's so many. I feel like Slafkovsky tonight was playing like a man possessed. It literally looked like he had been possessed by a demon that was forcing him to make Calgary cry. And he was so intense. He wasn't rewarded for it, but he was just so on top of it and intense. In fact, Oliver Kapanen got the reward, right? I want to say it was the 3rd goal that Montreal scored before Calgary got one. And it was Slafkovsky that did an incredible amount of work to put the puck on Kapanen stick and Kapanen. I keep getting confused. It's Kapanen, I know, because Michel Rocroix announces it as Kapanen all the time now. Oliver Kapanen really was the beneficiary of Slafkovsky's work with an excellent goal. Not to take that away from Oliver Kapanen, but I just felt like he would have had more points on the score sheet tonight, Slafkovsky, if the scoring went the way that his play went. I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but you kind of get what I mean, right? So up next, I'm not done praising Montreal Canadiens. We got to get into it. We got to get into so many other players. So let's talk about that in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in. It's a personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I was shocked when Rocket Money showed me that I was paying for a Patreon that I completely forgot about for a site that was defunct. Like it was no longer working, and I was still paying for it. It has already saved me money, and I love how it tracks all my subscriptions and lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. I don't have to hunt down customer service numbers. I don't have to worry about any of those headaches. And the automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. I can finally see exactly where my money is going each month, kind of like I can see where I'm going to order food or my entertainment budget, like going out with my friends. And you can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights, receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. And it even consolidates your checking, saving, loans, and investments into a single dashboard so you can get a clear view of your entire financial picture. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. You will get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Canadiens compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You'll also get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for our listeners. So go to lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, where was I? Before I go into our second segment, praising a bunch of people, I do have to remind everybody that tomorrow is our mailbag episode. So you can send us mailbag questions to lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can leave them in the YouTube comments, and you can also contact us on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Locked On Canadiens. So please send us mailbag questions for Friday. We're going to have our Panthers game recap. Obviously, Ian's going to be back as well. Maybe he has a bone to pick with all the things that I've said this week, maybe with my report cards from yesterday. Also, speaking of the report cards from yesterday, I'm like 99% sure that I forgot Alex Carrier. Now, I don't listen to myself when I do this podcast. After I do it, like it's done, it's wrapped. I can't stand the sound of my own voice. But if I did forget Alex Carrier, I am sorry. Alex Carrier is going to get a C for this year. Everybody has figured him out. He hasn't been able to kind of transition out of that. I have faith in him. He's an incredible player. I love him. He's the kind of guy that you want to go into the playoffs with, but other teams have been able to counterbalance what he brings to the table this year. And so I want to see a little bit more from him. So I'm giving him a C. So if I didn't do that in the last episode, if I missed Alex Carrier, then, this is my report card. But if I did one and then now I'm doing another one, then you'll know that I have way too much on my mind. I'm going crazy. And it'll be really funny if I gave two different grades on 2 different days. But anyways, sorry about that, Alex Carrier. You're very handsome. I forgot you because I was blinded by your handsomeness. Back to tonight's game. I talked about, that Slafkovsky, Kapanen goal. I also want to talk about Lane Hutson. Not good enough for Team USA, Lane Hutson. I'm just going to keep saying that. I think it's going to get old. You guys are probably going to get really annoyed, or if you aren't already. But Cole Caufield, Lane Hutson, like these guys, incredible. And I think that Lane Hutson has goals. Yes, he does. He has goals in 2 games in a row. He had the winner in the Dallas game, and I don't think he had the winner in this game. No, he did. He had what will stand as the winner in this game. So 2 game-winning goals in 2 games for Lane Hutson. Just wow, it's blowing my mind. I also really love the relationship that he's developing with Phillip Danault. And there's something about Phillip Danault's game. So he's only been here for less than a month? Like a couple weeks, actually. The roster trade free. So yeah, he's been here for two and a bit weeks. 2 weeks, 2 and a bit. Anyways, a little over 2 weeks, yes, because it was a Sunday night. So he's been here for such a short amount of time, and it feels like he's a new person, right? So I was watching, how the Canadiens will post on social media. They'll post like the game pictures and stats and things like that, and then they'll post the video from the dressing room after, right? And I thought it was really interesting that Lane Hutson had a game-winning goal. I think I think there was praise for the goalie too. Was it? I believe Sam Montembeault was in net. Yes, it was Sam Montembeault was in net. So like and then they praised the game winner, they praised the goaltender, but they gave that like whatever that wolf hat thing, whatever that thing is. I don't know what it is, but the player of the game, they handed it over to Phillip Danault, and there's something about like that scene that made me feel like this team is really making a huge effort to make Phillip Danault feel like part of the team. Part of it was also like Marty handed him a puck because it was his 400th point in the NHL. There were some jokes between him and Gallagher, just sort of Gallagher's always stealing his goals and things like that. So I just felt like there must be something about he probably arrived here really demoralized and looking for a change. And I think that what the Canadiens have been able to do is just kind of make him feel valued again and make him feel important. And he's been rewarding them with like pretty decent play, right? Like this is, again, second game in a row with an assist, but also his faceoffs have been incredible. So, they've needed him, right? He's been in some really, I think even tonight against Calgary, there was a really good play he made on one of the penalty kills, if I'm not mistaken. I'm fairly certain I'm remembering that right. Like there's just something about the way that he's playing. He's kind of like a new man. And I think the Canadiens are really, really going to benefit from not just his veteran presence, but like his motivation. Anyways, like I love what the Montreal Canadiens are sometimes able to do with players who need a change of scenery and to get back on track. And Phillip Danault is just one of the examples. And the other example is Alexandre Texier. Like when the Montreal Canadiens acquired him, he was free, by the way, as my co-host loves to remind everyone. He was free. They didn't have to give up any assets for him. They were just able to sign him because he had soured on his old team and his old situation. And he said after the game, he kept saying, like, this is where he wants to play. This is where he wants to play. Now, I'm not 100% sure about that. This is where he chose to play after he was bought out, I guess. But there, he 3 points in this game against Calgary. And I do want to emphasize, yes, it is Calgary. It is a bottom feeding team, but like this is not a man who normally routinely gets three points in a game. This is his first in his entire NHL career. This is his first 3-point game, right? Goal, 2 assists, an incredible turnaround for him. And he has benefited from being able to play with the right players. He has benefited from Marty a lot. And I just think that he's kind, when people used to talk back in the day about market inefficiencies, right? All that money ball and all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like he's a market inefficiency. He's a market inefficiency that the Montreal Canadiens were able to exploit. Like they take this player, they do the exact right things with him, and the right results will come out. I know it hasn't been very long, but since he's joined the Canadiens, I've just had just such fun watching him. And he's been pivotal in a lot of games. He's had moments in a lot of games where he's participated in what ended up making the difference. So I think it's really interesting that we continue, not we, I mean, we as a society, I mean, certain factions, like people continue to criticize Martin St. Louis as a coach and refuse to also acknowledge all of the benefits of Martin St. Louis as a coach. I think it's true that he still has a long way to go in certain respects. It's true that we do sometimes question his lineup decisions. We question his in-game tactical decisions, but you can't deny that this is a man who knows how to motivate players. Like these players will run through a wall for him. They would, like, if he said to jump off a cliff, they would, right? They love him and he loves them back. And there's just something like about the way that he works with all of these guys, whether it's a veteran coming in and after like a time where they were struggling or felt useless or were deemed useless, or it's a rookie that is trying to find their way in the world, or it's somebody like Cole Caufield, who at the time I guess was still very early in his career, struggling. Like I just find it really interesting that we continue to criticize Marty without giving him also the credit that he's due for things like this. And make no mistake, if a player in a bad situation comes to Montreal and thrives, it's not just because of the other guys. The other guys are great. The situation might be great, but Martin St. Louis has a lot to do with that. And I just went off on a tangent about career resurgences and Marty's role in it. But we do have to turn our attention back because we do have to talk about our Florida game. We have to finish giving flowers to people today. And then we have to talk about the Florida game that's coming up and a couple of injury notes. That's coming up in just one moment. All right. So real quick, just want to remind everyone to send us mailbag questions for tomorrow. I also want to apologize again for the lateness of this episode. I hope that tomorrow, we are able to get recording earlier so we can put this up earlier. In the meantime, we were talking about the game and kind of, who was a factor in it. I think that Cole Caufield also requires his flowers. And Nick Suzuki, he only had a point. You know how funny is it when Nick Suzuki gets a point? I'm like, oh, he only had a point. Nick Suzuki only had a point this game. But he and Caufield, I think, had a really, really fun game. A really good game. And I do think that the Texier factor is kind of that because they were struggling with Zach Bojic on the line. And that's totally fine. He's going to be okay. It's just that the first line with those two is not the place for Zach. But it could be the place for Alex Texier, who was finally confirmed to be on the France Olympic team. There was some weirdness about that because he was considered having made the Olympic team in the summer in July or whatever, and then his name was not on the roster, and then they and then the Canadiens posted like a week or so ago our Olympians, and Alex Texier was in them, but then again he wasn't on the official Team France roster, so now it's official, he's going to the Olympics. The Canadiens have 4 players going to the Olympics: Nick Suzuki, Slafkovsky, Oliver Kapanen, and Alex Texier. But where did I go from? Oh, yes, I was talking about the first line, having this resurgence with Alex Texier alongside them, which I think is really, it's really fun, but also just makes me sad because the top line has one guy on it that isn't going to the Olympics. But speaking of that guy, another goal, right? I think Cole Caufield in the last couple of games has kind of remembered that he's on pace for scoring 40 goals this year and has been working hard to make that happen. So I don't know. I just love love those players all together. I'm so sorry, fading right now. Then I wanted to really quickly touch on some injury concerns / notes before I signed off. There is trivia again. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten your trivia. The most concerning thing is that Kirby Dach was supposed to be out. I think it was middle of November that we were told he would be out for 4 to 6 weeks. So we're past that 6-week mark right now, and he's been seen at the Bell Center wearing a walking boot. So he's clearly still dealing with the foot fracture. I think it's a foot fracture, a fracture. I'm losing the plot. So he's still dealing with that, and it doesn't look like he's returning anytime soon. Kirby Dach is quite fragile, it looks like. But at the same time, Kent Hughes said that he's not concerned. He wants to give all the players, essentially, time to heal before they have to come back, because the Montreal Canadiens are able to keep it together. They're able to keep winning games. And, it's better for them to heal completely before and not try to rush back. This isn't a situation where it's the playoffs and you're playing with a collapsed lung or anything like that. Kaiden Guhle has been practicing with the team, but there's no word on when he's going to come back. But he's at the point now where he's no longer in no contact, so it could be anytime. But the one I'm most concerned about isn't actually a Montreal Canadien at all. So at the time that I'm recording this, there's still no news on whether Xhekaj is going to make his debut back from injury, his season debut. He has not played since the Stanley Cup final. And so he is traveling with Florida. So Florida started a 6-game road trip against Toronto, I believe, last night. And so he traveled with the team, and so did all of his hockey gear. So he's expected to make his season debut at some point on this road trip. The Canadiens are game 2 out of 6 road games. So it's not necessary that it's going to be the Canadiens that he makes his debut against, but I have this feeling that we are going to see Matthew Tkachuk in that Panthers game tonight, and the Montreal Canadiens are going to have their work cut out for them. But the good news is, Tkachuk or no Tkachuk, they are able to beat the Florida Panthers fairly regularly. In fact, they've done it, I think, 5 times in a row at this point. So I want to say it's 5. This would be the 6th if they manage to win tonight's game. So that was like my biggest concern, is when is Tkachuk coming back? I just don't want the Canadiens to see him on the ice. I'm just not in the mood for that. I also don't want to see him in the Olympics, but I have no choice. So yeah. So those are the big ones. And we've seen Patrick Laine skating, but that doesn't mean that he's close to return. And no real change on Jake Evans, and Josh Anderson, I believe, is, again, no change on that either. So overall, just worried about the Tkachuk one, and hopeful that the Kaiden Guhle can come back in, because he's only played 5 games. It feels like forever since we've seen him, but I really think that it's going to give the Habs a boost when he is able to play. But yeah, and I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to remember if there's any players I'm missing from giving them their flowers in that Calgary game tonight, but I can't. So let's do our trivia and focus our attention to tomorrow's episode, which is going to be the mailbag. So the trivia question for yesterday was, which current Montreal Canadien has won a Guy Carbonneau trophy for best defensive forward? Is essentially the Selke of the QMJHL. The answer is Phillip Danault, and our good friend Kyle Roberts was the only one who got that answer. Today's trivia question is it's Calgary Flames related. So in 2011, the Montreal Canadiens played a Heritage Classic against the Calgary Flames. Name all of the players who were on Calgary's roster on that date in that game that also were either later or earlier Montreal Canadiens. So all the people on that 2011, I think it was February 20th, if I'm not mistaken, 2011 Calgary roster, just the Heritage Classic roster. Name all of the guys that were Calgary players then that later became Montreal Canadiens or had been Montreal Canadiens before arriving in Calgary. That's the trivia question for tomorrow. You can leave it in the YouTube comments, the answer. You can send us via email. You can send it to us on Instagram, Blue Sky, or TikTok. We're at Locked On Canadiens at all of those places. I tried to make it easy, but also hard. Like, this is kind of a research skills rather than a trivia question. But I hope it's okay. And in the meantime, I want to thank you all for listening today to Locked On Canadiens. And don't forget that tomorrow is our mailbag episode after we have the Panthers recap. Ian will be back as well, hopefully. And we want to make sure that you subscribe to and follow Locked On Canadiens all over, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, so that you get all of our latest episodes. I also want to thank you all for bearing with me in my solo episodes. I know I struggle a lot more than my co-host does, but I really appreciate all of you. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Canadiens ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you who are on video, we're going to send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, we ask you to please make your second listen of the day NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you tomorrow, and hopefully Ian will too.